Okay. Now we can talk. So it was kind of crazy back in 2013 when our company had been embezzled, millions of dollars stolen. And so there was six of us that went and got Indian visas all at the same time. We went up to San Francisco for the sole purpose of all going to India to try to reclaim our funds, to reclaim the cash that was ours. Long story there, but I think it was six of us. It was Rachel, Chris, Alex, Colin,
what's the very high level, though? What was the idea behind going to India to claim what was ours? Why was going to India necessary to reclaim money that was embezzled from us?
Well, we had found out that in December of 2012 that there was an issue with us getting our... I had raised $3 million in India. And...
From who?
From three different investors, $1 million each.
About this travel show?
Yeah, we were making a travel
concept.
Television show for China that these investors wanted us to make a
Indian
exact version with Indian actors, Hindi-speaking actors, and mixing it with American actors that speak the local languages, and filming all across the United States, and then broadcasting that onto Indian television.
So they wanted to invest. They were investing in the long-term vision of the concept.
Yeah,
the replicable nature of it.
How did you meet these three individuals?
So to back it up even, now we got to keep backing this thing up.
Back
You
it
cannot
up.
tell
Back
that
it up.
without telling
Back
that. So
Short version. JK.
do a short version.
That's why I said high level. Like, give me the high level. Like, who are those three people? Where do you meet
for
them?
anybody who watches our TikToks and Instagrams and YouTubes and Facebooks, whatever, you got to know that I talk a lot and Sam edits a ton of the material away because to cut down to what actually is the high level. So I have a tendency to be very verbose.
Did you meet them at the gym, at a coffee shop, at the grocery store?
There we go. No, I met them through one of the people that worked at our company who said, we were trying to raise cash because we had a hole in our balance sheet. We had a contract we had signed with the federal government of the United States, with the Department of Commerce, and they reneged on it because their whole executive team got fired. And so all of a sudden, the contract was in huge question, but we needed to be able to film our television show, so we found that we were $3 million short, which required us to immediately need to raise capital. So instead of getting cash coming in from revenue through sponsorships, we were in a serious rush to go and get any money to be able to bridge the gap because we had a deadline. We had an actual air date in China for the TV show, and we were short by a couple $1 million.
So that's so much pressure. Oh my God.
It was an insane amount of pressure. I was 33 years old, maybe 34. And all of a sudden, I've got all these people working at the office, and we have a television air date in China. Like, it's insane. And we're based in Los Angeles. We have people in London. We have people in China, and we're trying to film this thing. And now our main source of sponsorship, it was our largest sponsorship, disappeared overnight. I flew to Washington, D.C. to go actually pick up the first check from the Department of Commerce, their group called Brand USA. Terrible organization, awful organization. I have nothing but bad feelings towards Brand USA.
Are they still even in existence?
Yeah, they're still in existence. They're still probably mismanaged even now.
Boo you, Brand USA. Boo you.
An awful organization. Terrible experience there. I could tell a lot of stories about Brand USA. They should disappear. They should not be an organization at all.
Maybe Doge will do something about it.
Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. That would make me very happy. But anyways, Brand USA, I go to the building because they weren't returning my calls, and I was like, "This is crazy." We have actually it was a $4 million contract, but we needed $3 million for the show in order to be able to film everything that we wanted to, and because they're not returning my calls, I can't get anyone on the phone. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to fly there. And, this is the kind of stuff. Travel. We've done so much travel in this business. And I always believed the best way to do any meeting was to do it in person. And I still believe that.
Requiring travel.
So I hopped on a plane, flew to Washington, D.C., I Street in Washington, and I went right to the building, walked up, and there was a notice on the door saying it was closed and that... there was nobody there. It was like windows shut, the whole 9 yards. And so
They didn't have Google hours at that time.
no, they had Google hours. Google showed that it was open.
Dang.
But because so finally I get a hold of an executive assistant that worked at Brand USA, and I was like, "What happened?" And she goes, "The Department of Commerce just fired the entire senior staff."
Whoa.
And I'm just going, "What are we going to do?" Because we were relying on that cash. And so I'm
Not
sitting
only
there,
do you have an air date in China for I don't know how many months in the future, but you also have a script that's a work in progress, which then has to lead to the filming, actually, principal photography needing to take place, and then followed by editing, and then locking, and then shoot. So you have all the sequence that needs to happen perfectly.
yeah.
Oh, and for all of it to occur, the funding needed to occur at the the very highest of all levels.
Yeah.
So that's an enormous amount of pressure. I can only imagine. And we didn't really know at the time the details of it. We only really knew high level stuff. We weren't really clued in because frankly, we weren't as close as we are now, and we didn't have the trust of you or your brother quite yet because everyone was new to each other. So
Yeah.
we were just on the outside, on the fringe, just kind of learning about this stuff. Through the grapevine, but we didn't understand the enormity of it.
Yeah, it was bewildering. You would never. So I have this contract in my hand, $4 million. I don't know what to do, and who am I going to sue? The Department of Commerce? I'm going to go after that cash. Then I'm thinking to myself, that's going to be locked up in court for the next couple of years, trying to recoup on that, and so it was a. And what's funny is that Brand USA, working with them, was the best possible option because they had just been founded the year before. It was originally called the Council of Travel Promotion. I had met with all their senior team, and they thought, wow, Brian, this is the perfect way for us to be able to. So the Brand USA is the whole purpose of them is to highlight tourism from outside of the United States and bring it into the United States. And that was their mandate. And we had the only contract for making television shows in the West for broadcast in China. And my show was all about travel and cultural exchange and people getting along between different cultures. And so I was doing Brand USA's job for them. I was the only person in that organization that had any kind of Chinese experience. I just lived in China for the previous year and signed these contracts. And I had Ford as a primary sponsor. So, it wasn't like we were a fly-by-night organization. We had a serious, high-level brand sponsor who was the title sponsor. It was Ford's Road Trip America. And so Brand USA was the natural, like every single person I talked to back then in 2011 and 12 said, you need to go sign a contract with Brand USA. They have all this cash to support projects that increase tourism. And the Chinese tourism industry was exploding at this time. And so they were the obvious ally. And I made a couple friends at Brand USA. They brought me in, and it went extremely well. Like we completely were on the same page. Me and this guy named Chris, who was the chief marketing officer, we got on super well. And he was like, you know what, this is exactly what we need to do. This could be a flagship project for us. And then, him and everybody else was fired about 6 months later.
They didn't think to let you know.
Nope, nobody let me know. In fact, I did get a kind of quasi apology from him on LinkedIn like a couple of years later, where he's like, yeah, we kind of did you dirty.
Wow.
And so
At least that's nice to hear.
that was nice. That was nice.
But at the same time, we weren't really aware. Everyone else beneath the C-suite of Sixtus, you could say,
yeah,
was
else.
totally not privy to.
Well, this was way before you guys joined. So not way before. So all of this happened in August. You and Sam both joined the organization around November, I think. October.
Wait, the
November?
embezzlement occurred when?
No, so the Brand USA reneging on the contract when they got all fired, it was August of 2012. And so, no, when we came back, it was an all hands on deck meeting with the team that was there. And so we were sitting down there around the table going, what do we do now? We have a hole of, they were supposed to give us $4 million, but we really only needed $3 million of the 4. So we're sitting around the table going, all right, we're doing this multi-million-dollar TV series and we're $3 million short. What do we do?
I mean, people might hear that and they're like, "Holy shit, that's a lot of money for a television show." But I mean, let's not forget that so much of it was included travel and hotels and moving large units of people all across the United States for thousands of miles. So
No, I would actually say $3 million for a show of that kind is very, very cheap. We were doing it on a budget because the anticipation was that after we did season 1, we could charge a lot more for other sponsors. And so we were actually coming in at super cheap prices to be able to...
Was that for the entirety of the season or the pilot?
No, that's for season 1. Yeah. So in fact, and I think it was a 12 episode. I can't remember if it was 10 or 12 episodes had committed to. I think maybe it was 10, but it was at the time. I remember thinking, okay, actually we were initially going to do the whole show for 600,000. And that was the amount that I had sold to the television.
600,000?
Yeah. Because it was meant to be a small show.
For 10 to 12 episodes?
Yeah.
Dang.
Yeah, but it was going to be just like a couple people and a camera. It was going to be very, very small.
Very low quality.
Yeah, I was going to do things small. In fact,
You thought it was going to be a YouTube series or something?
yeah, I thought it was going to be the style of a YouTube series, but that we were going to put on Chinese television.
Yeah.
But comparative to anything else on Chinese television in 2012, it would look phenomenal because Chinese television in 2009, 10, 11, 12, when I first started getting into this, it looked like television from the 1980s. And so I remember talking to several people and being like, how much would be the bare bones version I could do this for? And the number we landed on was 600,000. And so when I pitched it to Ford and Travel Channel in China, they accepted it at those kind of levels. And what it was is that I had gone to Brand USA in Washington, D.C., and they said, we really like this idea, but if we do this with you, we want to put in a lot more money so that you do it at a much bigger level. So it was actually Brand USA that actually convinced us to do this at a heightened level. So what was initially a $600,000 show became a $3 million show.
So this was in August before any filming started?
Yeah, this was well before the filming.
Okay.
But the problem was we had an air date. We had already reserved the time on the Chinese channel. We'd already, that had already been sorted. We hadn't filmed anything. In fact, we were still working on, pre-production, but we realized that if we're going to do this in the larger way, and so we started, thinking, okay, you got to change the script, you got to change, a lot of different aspects to it. And so there was there was some discussion at the table of, do we go back to the original thing?
Yeah, because I'm sure that you could have at that time, but then you probably were very inspired to do the larger version. Or what made you stick to that?
That we had already gone back to the channel. We'd already gone back to Ford. We started bringing other sponsors on board.
Okay.
They already knew that we were going to be doing it at a higher level, so they started committing more to us.
Gotcha.
And so it was, at that point, it was too late. We had already kind of committed a much larger level. We'd told the channel. We had actually flown out the channel to their leadership to. Were you guys there when?
No, I wasn't there, but I heard about this.
I was there. It was the first day I worked.
I heard
Was
about
when
a
the-
specific gift was left.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
Statue?
Statue?
No, they gave us. They showed up and they brought us some dolls.
Dolls.
And I think we got them. I wasn't there when it happened. I was in India. But we gave them like a bottle of Johnny Walker Blue that was engraved, and we gave them courtside seats to a Lakers game.
That's right.
And I was like, what are you guys doing? Why are you spending this money on Lakers tickets? And I was like, oh, it's because I think it was Tony and Ryan or whatever wanted to go to the Lakers courtside. And so they
That's
bought
so
them
funny.
tickets so that they could go. It was this whole thing.
Courtside.
Whatever
Wow.
it was. I can't remember. It
The
was a long
amount of
time ago.
waste.
There was a lot of waste. But anyways, so I'm making this series now. We got the hole in the balance sheet for $3 million. Brand USA pulls the rug out from underneath my feet,
Jeez.
and I'm flying back to Los Angeles, tail between my legs, sitting down with the team, going, "How are we going to do this? I don't know what to do."
So who was your knight in shining
My
armor?
savior.
Who was your
My
savior? Who stuck up their hand and said, "I have an idea"?
Well, we had several ideas. The first ideas were that we had already had some early investment interest from other companies. There was this one financing company in China that was interested in us. There was the New York investment banking firm through Alex, if you guys remember that from the last the last podcast we did, the evil Alex, who was our investor that tricked me to go to New York City and then he didn't show up, that guy. And so that's actually because I did that meeting because of this hole in the balance sheet. And so we were throwing around different ideas, but there was mainly like 2 or 3 companies that we were pursuing. And there was one of them that was actually a pretty good lead. But then one of the people in my company who had been there for maybe 6 months, an Indian national, he said, well, this is an easy solution. My family's wealthy. My family has a lot of power in India. We have a huge network of people. Brian, if you promise that you'll make this same show for India when you're done with China, I'll help you raise that cash in India. And at first, I was like, well, going to India to go raise money for a TV show in China just seemed a little absurd. But he goes, actually, what we'll go to first is we're going to fly to Orlando, Florida, because I have a good friend there, Ajay Vijay, who will get us the money, no questions, because he loves to invest in these kinds of things. And so we ended up flying to Orlando together. And that's what kicked off everything, was our first flight to Orlando. And next thing you know, I'm having, drinks, dinners with this Indian investor. And he started making new introductions to people in India. And next thing you know, I'm flying out to India for investor meetings. And then spent the next month in India going and pitching and doing investor meetings and meeting with attorneys and law firms and set up Sixtus in India.
Yep.
We had to actually make the company over there to be able to raise money over there. And yeah, it went
successful, right?
Well, the first couple of weeks were incredibly challenging, but I was being, taken out for lavish dinners and going to nice, beautiful homes. And in fact, one of them was a palace, kind of estate, with like a lot of servants, and it went really well. We ended up over the next, I think it took us about 6 weeks, but we ended up raising the cash from 3 different individuals who all
How much?
said that they were excited, $1 million each.
Okay.
And
Well, isn't that you thought you were?
no, we did. Because
You actually did.
No, because it was all deposited into the Sixtus India bank account, which I had access to.
Then where did the story come about falsifying bank records?
Oh, that all comes later, man. That's, you're talking like...
Am I putting the cart before the horse?
Yeah, man, you're way before the...
Continue.
So, no, everything was fine. Everything was above board. So what we had to do is actually essentially put together an LLC in India. And we had to do that through my colleague who used his family, and we ended up hiring this lawyer that came to the house, and we spent a bunch of time with him. His name was also Ajay. And signed the paperwork, started up the company. Everything was completely legit. We were a television company with the plan to film content into India. In fact, I met with a bunch of India television producers and people in the industry, kind of in the Bollywood space. And so I actually started thinking, man, this is fantastic. That once I kind of switched over thinking, I was like, this is great. The production that we're going to do in Los Angeles all across the country, I'm going to have my Chinese speaking cast, but I'll have the whole crew there. And so as soon as we film the scene with the Chinese cast, we'll just remove them and then put on the Hindi speaking cast, just have them on the trailer right there. And now you're essentially filming 2 shows for the price of 1. In fact, there was part of me that was like, why don't I bring a Spanish speaking cast? French-speaking cast. I could have a series of casts on set. We film the same scenes and broadcast this into a variety of different countries, because the main concept is the same. Friends traveling around America, enjoying the United States, learning about it through, using friendship and a road trip as the medium to do so. And so it started seeming like, okay, I can do the Chinese and the Indian version at the same time. It's just going to be a little bit more challenging, but we have the right people to kind of execute on this plan. So at the time, I was able to say, okay, this is really good. In fact, I thought that this would be a good thing to be able to sell, the once Brand USA would eventually kind of come back, I'd be able to take it to them and say, look, now we're not just hitting the billion people in China, we can also hit a billion people in India. And then, billion people across the Spanish speaking world or whatever the number is. And so it was seeming like a good idea. We had $3 million in our bank account in India. I was getting bank statements telling me that money was there. And I'd flown back to Los Angeles because we're going to start filming. We're going to start prepping this.
Yeah,
Now
you were overseas. Meanwhile, Sam and I and the rest of the crew and cast were operating normally.
Yeah, you guys were
none the wiser on what was that happening. It was just
You don't want to
standard operating.
a panic about having no money or whatever,
Well, so the Brand USA disaster was in August, and we raised the money in November.
Mm-hmm. So everything was fine and
so
dandy.
September, October, November was we still had cash from our previous investments and also from like Ford and the other contributors to the project.
But not enough to cover the entirety.
But not enough to cover the production. So we were fine. September, October, great months, but we were, really working hard to raise cash. And so it was that kind of October, November, December where I was doing the India. I think it was November when I first went over there, November 2012, and raising the cash. And then it was, the cash in the account. I still have a bank statement on my computer that shows the cash in the account on December 20th, trying to be wired across to our Los Angeles account. And my colleague who was in India, he was still there. I was in Los Angeles, and he kept saying, I'm going to the banks. And they keep telling me they're trying to transfer it, but it's not coming across. It's not coming across. Yeah. And thus began the nightmare of the next many years. But it was actually Christmas Eve, 2012, where I was sitting in for Christmas, or like a Christmas party. I took the most of the staff to Hollywood Bowl to go bowling for the evening. And I remember we were all driving there, and I had just gotten a call from my colleague in India saying that there had been an accident where his brother had been in a drunk driving incident where he was the perpetrator and had killed someone. And so he said there was going to be some problems in transferring the cash. And when you have those kinds of moments happen, you realize, okay, there's something really bad going on.
I ain't never seen that cash. That's what I would have thought in that moment.
Yeah, in my moment, I was like, how did we go from making a $600,000 TV show across America with my buddies, filming that and putting it on the air in China, to now something that's starting to feel dark, and something that is very dark.
So because this was 13 years ago now, we go to the Christmas party and we're having a great time. We're not.
So you guys are at the Christmas party having a grand old time.
Yeah,
right
the
now.
best.
We're not privy to any of this.
You guys are bowling.
How long
nachos?
between bowling turkeys, which I was doing, to you then revealing to us that actually we can't proceed and we all have to go find other jobs? I can't remember that period of time. What was that interval?
Great question. It was.
Feels like maybe 2 weeks.
And I feel like it was, if I recall, it was your brother who made the announcement. And
Yeah,
I don't
he
know
did.
if you were around.
No, because I immediately got on a plane. So after I was told that it wasn't going to happen, I was like, the only way this is going to happen for us to get the cash necessary for us to make this production happen is I'm going to have to fly to India, and I'm going to have to push this over the finish line. I'm going to have to physically go to the bank, get the wires done myself, because I stopped trusting the colleague at this point, and do it all myself. And so I think I spent the next few days, like Christmas Day for me was really hard. Like everyone in the office, it was one of the best Christmases ever. Everyone's in there having a grand old time, and I'm sitting there kind of on the side knowing the gravity of what's going on. And everybody else is having this great time, and I'm like, man, I'm going to ruin a lot of people's...
Yeah, you can't enjoy Christmas that day.
I didn't really enjoy it so much.
No.
I think I told there was like 1 or 2 people in the company that knew. And the producer knew. And that was pretty much it. And so I think it was he and I spent a bunch of time talking about what to do. And there was like, well, do we go back to the other investors and kind of, no, we're like, no, we've raised $3 million. I spent all that time pitching, all those time presenting, building decks, wining and dining these, Indian investors in India, like I need to go claim what is the company's.
Relationships are still warm.
Relationships were great. At least I thought they were fantastic. And so I ended up on New Year's, it was New Year's Eve that there's a picture of me wheeling my suitcase to the door in our office. And I remember looking at everyone and saying, okay, I'll see everybody in a few days. And I genuinely thought I was flying for a few days. And I pretty much didn't come back for a year. And got on the plane, landed in Jaipur, Rajasthan on New Year's Eve, December 31st, 2012. And I arrived into a horrible situation.
Shitstorm.
Yeah. And so, you never know.
It was so you came to the realization fairly quickly, right? Am I wrong? After you arrived, between your arrival and knowing this is a dead end, because between Christmas or New Year's and us realizing that this can't go on, but 16 days. Yeah. Okay. So we were, again, operating normally. And then I remember it being around the time of the new year where we had that really big meeting internally with everyone who was ever involved in the production. It was over, 50 people, and your brother saying, this is over, and I'm sorry, but we're going to have to let you all go. We'll pay for your flights to wherever you want to go. But we can't guarantee this is going to happen. We thought maybe we could make it work, but at least in the short term, this is not happening.
Yeah. Yeah, it was 16 days. And I remember that because it was January 16th. I remember that day extraordinarily clearly because it was one of the worst days of my life. And it was a moment where... So...
Don't you wish that we could, when this is posted, direct message everyone that was ever on that...
on the
involved
production?
On the production.
Yeah, they don't all know this story. They don't know this story.
They don't know, and they've made their own assumptions, and they don't know the whole story. And I'm sure they have their opinions about us, or about you, or about Shane and Alex. So, wouldn't it be nice if they could just take an hour or a half hour and just listen to this? Because then they would understand.
Yeah, well, I always still plan on writing a book about the whole thing. I want to tell, and as a lot of you know, I've kept a journal every day for the last 21 years, and I wrote quite extensively, like paragraph a day during that whole time period, so that I would never forget what happened. And I will 100% write the book.
And a docuseries.
It is a phenomenal story. It's, but it was 16 days, and I remember those 2 weeks that I was in India. I was waiting, and with my colleague, I would meet up with him, and I would... It was amazing how somebody who can be a perpetrator of a problem turns into a victim instantly. Because, so his brother, who had killed someone in a drunk driving incident, his father made all the issues go away and had used his power in the courts because he was a powerful guy. But this brother was still getting married. And so there was this wedding that was planned for the 15th, 16th, 17th of January. And there were like 10,000 people that came to the wedding because this, my colleague's father, the family, extremely powerful people in India, had a lot of money, more importantly, the money, they had power, a lot of power. And they owned a lot of buildings. I think they owned Microsoft headquarters in Rajasthan. And so, so while I'm trying to get my colleague to help me transfer the money and go to the bank and to move the money across, because I can't go and do the transfers myself at the bank because I always have to have the Indian partner who's part of the joint venture be able to do the wire. I can't just walk in as an American citizen. It has to be initiated by the Indian citizen. And so I kept trying to get him to go to the bank with me to go and do the wire transfers, and he always had excuses. And he was like, well, my family, my brother's getting married. There's all these problems and I have to be there. And I'm like, bro, I have like, I don't know how many people were at Blue Jay at this time, but I have like 50 to 100 people at my office in Los Angeles between the cast crew and the workers that need to get paid, and that we're putting this production on the road. We're supposed to be going to San Francisco like any day now to go. We were wiring a train for explosives, I think, in San Francisco. We had hired a Hong Kong stunt team to come out and blow up some train as part of the script required. And so all these people need to get paid. And I'm sitting here in a hotel in Jaipur trying to get my colleague to do the wire. That's all he has to do is wire the cash across. Why is this a problem? And he's just all these excuses of why he has to be with his family. And there's this, and his brother's getting married. And I think it was, the 15th, 16th, 17th of January. And so I end up going to the wedding in an attempt to still at the wedding, trying to like pull on his coat, be like, hey man, can we do the wire tomorrow? Can we do the wire tomorrow? And he keeps brushing me off and, hey, we'll take care of it. We'll take care of it. And, long story short, that wire to this day has never come across. We never got the money.
It's still pending.
It's still pending. And, there's a lot of criminal stuff there, and there's a lot of really bad, it was a horrible experience.
When was, while this was all happening, when did we start traveling?
Oh yeah.
When did
keep asking me that?
When did we get involved?
So on the 16th at the wedding, it was at the wedding. I think it was the next day after. And my colleague said that he needed to go somewhere else. I think he was flying to like Delhi or Kolkata or somewhere. And I remember realizing in that moment that it was quite impossible to wire the cash across in time to make our deadlines for the show and to make payroll. Oh, let me rewind this a little bit. So after January 1st, I called my lead investor and I said, listen, we have $3 million here in India. We need like $100,000 right now. If you could transfer me that cash, we'll be able to keep the company going for like another few weeks. And until this, we're going to get this money across from India. I just need you to transfer like a bridge investment of like $100,000. And so he, within like an hour, our amazing investor wired me $100,000. No questions asked. Let's just, here you go.
Amazing.
Yeah. And that's how we made kind of payroll and all expenses for the next like couple weeks. And I was very, very grateful, and this sense of relief. And I remember that's what allowed me to be able to go to the wedding and be able to keep pursuing the cash, but still put on a smiling face, is that we had gotten that extra $100,000, which was incredibly helpful at the time. But it was the 16th of January where I was sitting there in the hotel room and realizing there's no way on earth we're going to get the money in time for the producer's deadline of when all these things need to happen to make payroll. And so the producer, my brother, ended up bringing the whole company together, I think 16th, 17th of January, and told everyone, we're going to have to let everyone go. Yeah, we're going to buy you flights, but we're going to have to pause this production. We're still hoping to do it. We have every intention of doing it. The channel still expects it from us, but until we get this money across from India back into the States, we are unable to continue.
Yeah, it was a hopeful speech, but then years later, learning the details, that he was putting on a face.
No, I think he definitely believed we were going to still do it. I still believe at this point, I still believed we could make it happen. It actually wasn't for another it took about 4 months where I finally accepted. Right,
because you were in India for
the rest of 2013.
That's when we started to enact the plan of get your Indian visas sorted, fly to Europe, and be in a holding pattern until we can make the
retrieve the cash,
what is rightfully ours.
Yes,
in different kind of ways.
Why would we? Why wouldn't there just be a bank transfer? Like, why would we have to fly?
Yeah. No, well, part of it was because I needed support. Is that I had been in India so long that I needed people to be there. Some morale. My morale was just dead.
Absolutely.
And it didn't help that my personal life wasn't very good at the time. And so it was a very challenging time period where I'm in India, and because we were out of cash, I had to all of a sudden, instead of being in hotels, I started living in a $5 a night youth hostel because I couldn't afford anything else. Because I'd spent every dollar I had. I'd in fact gone into great amounts of debt to try to pay the salaries for the team and to keep the production going. And so I'd used every possible avenue for cash to be able to keep the production alive.
Now, I love hostels personally. I've been to a few in my day. Really enjoy them, but I'm sure a $5 hostel. And
I love the movie Hostel.
Oh, I haven't seen that one actually. That's a scary one, right?
Yeah, it's very, very scary.
Yeah,
but
like-
I like it a lot more than actual hostels.
Can you see that I'm experiencing the PTSD from this experience? Can you sense it?
It's showing in your face. a
Yeah, I
bit.
can feel it, man.
Yeah, I'm sure that wasn't a pleasant experience.
Man, it's funny. It's been 12 years.
Yeah.
But as soon as my brain goes into thinking about it, I'm right there. I can smell it. I can feel it. And
Wow,
so
three bachelor years ago.
When we write this movie, we should consider making it kind of falsifying the last third of the movie to where the things all the things that I remember us doing in Europe in preparation of what we were trying to do actually do happen. And we haven't touched on that. People have no idea what the hell I'm saying, but we started going down rabbit holes about how to actually move large amounts of physical money from one place on the planet to another. And that's when whenever I've shared the story about what we were trying to do, people like to compare it to Argo. Argo meets Entourage is the very kind of go-to.
Well, the funniest thing, it's tragic. This is also tragic, is that we thought, okay, the way we'll transfer the money across if we're having problems with the banks is I'll buy Bitcoin. And so the plan was to buy 3.
Man,
So at one point I had a lot of Bitcoin.
$3 million of Bitcoin
In 2012.
You'd have more
2012.
money. You'd have more money than Jeff Bezos.
Yeah. No, we were, there was a time that my Bitcoin wallet was
Can someone do the calculation right now? How much that would have been? Could you ask chat?
$3
$3 million in Bitcoin in 2012.
Oh my goodness gracious!
Yeah. What's funny is
Do you know how much Taco Bell you could get with that?
I transferred a significant amount of money into Bitcoin at one point in 2012. And sadly, I sold that amount in 2013.
Oh, that's the
But I had left only a tiny fraction of a coin in my account, and I checked it 5 years later, and it was worth it was still worth thousands. And I was like, "What?
Where is it now?
What? My Bitcoin account? No, I've never put anything in it after that.
But did you ever take that out?
Oh yeah, no, I
All of it,
I
even a
cashed
few
it
years
out.
later.
I cashed it all out. And so, I still made a profit on the thing, but it was I can't even imagine how much it'd be worth today if I'd kept it in there.
$3 million $3 million investment in Bitcoin during 2012 would be worth approximately between 23.8 billion and 60.6 billion today.
Dang.
Do you hear that, Gotham? If we had done that, and if we had put that money into Bitcoin like I had planned, that's how much money we'd have today.
What? Yeah. Why Bitcoin?
Because, so here's the issue, is that the banks in India, the problem is my colleague who, see, this is where it goes from, is it a issue with moving cash across, or is it there's something darker?
Yeah.
That's an 11,000x, by the way.
Yeah, so I guess
11,000 times more money is what you would have.
I would have
acquired.
my 1952 Mickey Mantle PSA 10 right now.
11,000 times.
Yeah, so it was, it was a crazy experience, man. I'm staying in this. Actually, for a while, I lived in a place I lovingly referred to as Mosquito House because it was just filled with mosquitoes. And
Did we visit you at the mosquito house that one time?
yeah, you did.
Yeah.
No, nobody had ever. Oh wait.
Because I did stay at a hostel with you at.
Oh no, that was a nice place. That was fancy. Fancy Sam living in the nice place.
It's true.
No. Mosquito House. My brother came to Mosquito House one night, but no, there was. Yeah, Mosquito House was I would spend most of my time doing push-ups and watching shows.
Yeah.
And waiting.
Eating curry, I'm sure.
And eating a lot of curry. I ate more Rogan Josh and more Yeah,
Garlic naan.
Yeah, I would get the garlic naan. I'd get the cheese naan. I could order Indian food. Like when I finally went back to London, like a year or two later, I ordered Indian food the way I would do in India, and they're always like, "How do you know how to do an order like that?"
It's funny because when you're over there, this is before we arrived in India, we and your brother, sharing how it would be nice to go there to Brian for moral support, but also for these other things, these other strategies that we were devising on how to take the money from India to America. We're in Europe at the time, and we're having quite a juxtaposed experience to you because we're actually living the nice European life.
Yeah.
But we were in what Shane described as a holding pattern. He said, "Well, we might as well be within striking distance. Let's we think it's more than likely that we'll probably go to India. So let's go hang out in Europe and stay there, do what we want to do, and we'll probably go to India in a couple of weeks, but it could be as soon as a few days. So let's just get many thousands of miles closer." So Sam, me, Chris, and Rachel are...
Yeah, the reason why you guys were staying in the nicer accommodations is because at this point Chris was paying for it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yep.
That's what it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, in fact, when
I didn't have any money.
when you, Chris, and my brother and my girlfriend all showed up, we all of a sudden I was staying in a hotel for the first time in a while because I was like, wow, okay.
Mm-hmm. But the reason we all showed up is because I remember we were all in the south of Spain, and Shane gets on a phone call, and we're all on speaker, and he's like, "Okay, guys, now's the time. Let's book your flights to India right now because I think us getting the money is imminent."
Yeah, there was because we kept being told that is my colleague.
But he
in
really
India
believed it in
kept
that moment.
saying- Yeah, no, we did.
Yeah.
We really did because there was this a couple of days where we met with him, and he sat down with me and Shane and said, "Guys, I'm turning over all the cash. I'm ready to do it. Okay, we're going to do this."
And who said this to you?
Gotham. So, AKA the colleague. But the thing is this point is like now months later. I think you guys arrived in like what, June? Was it May, June, April? It was late. So I'd already been there for months, solo. And then all of a sudden, some of the guys from Sixtus, and I didn't know Colin and Sam at this time. I didn't know Chris. And so people started showing up to kind of boost morale and to help me kind of, it wasn't about like physically getting on planes with cash. It was more of like brainstorming every possible way that we could solve this problem of there's $3 million in our corporate bank account, in this bank in India, a very large bank that's a worldwide bank. How do we transfer that bank account cash into our bank account in Los Angeles?
Much of what we were doing in Europe, actually, and work-wise, was brainstorming that exact problem.
Yeah.
While you were in India.
Yeah, exactly. And so,
I remember having starting relationships with private charter jet aircraft company client service representatives talking about what we were thinking about doing and the possibilities and how the feasibility of it all.
Yeah, because we were told by the bank manager that because you guys are a television business, you cannot move cash across because India had problems with all kinds of fraud. And so people had used that as a means to do nefarious things. And so we were told you have to turn the company from, because we also had a tourism part of our business. And they said, well, the tourism part will work. So if you can transfer your company from a television business to a tourism business, then you can transfer the money out. And so we filed paperwork to add the tourism component to the television component. And that right there, boom, that was a month of my life burned just doing all that paperwork and waiting for these, for us to get, the authorization. So we get the authorization and then we try to do the wire transfers again and what money's not transferring again. And so we're going back to the bank. Why is the money not transferring? But at first I was able to go to the bank for all these meetings. But as time went on, it was funny because the initial meetings I had at banks and accounting firms, it was all in English. I was allowed to come. And then as time went on, the meetings started becoming in Hindi. and I was there, but it was in Hindi. And then the meetings, I was told, actually, nobody wants you here because you're an American. You shouldn't be here. This should only be handled by Indians. And so as time went on, I started getting pushed out of the whole process. And I'm like, I'm the CEO. I'm a signer on the account. And they're like, no, my colleague kept saying, you shouldn't be here. So it was like I kept slowly being pushed out of the whole experience. And I found myself now just week on week after week being in my hotel room at Mosquito House and waiting for these transfers to happen, which weren't happening. And meanwhile, the rest of our Los Angeles office is closed, and the rest of the company that stayed loyal, that wanted to kind of help us through this whole process, is now on their own dimes in Europe, waiting to come and help me. And then finally, a few of them come in and spend time with me in India, and we're all just brainstorming how do we solve this. And at this point, we know the Indian colleague was up to something that we didn't know about. We had no idea what was going on. All we knew is that we were completely in the dark. And so we kind of just bonded together. We all hung out. We ate a bunch of Indian food. We, went to Juhu Beach and saw that disaster of a town. And do you remember going to Juhu Beach?
I do. It was awful. It was
remember
really
that
bad.
guy was trying to buy a
monkey.
Yeah, trying to sell you a monkey.
Yeah.
You didn't buy the monkey.
Did not buy the monkey. No.
You like dogs, not monkeys.
Did you shufu at Juhu? Shufu is I'm having a good time in Chinese, and Juhu sounds like shuf.
Yeah, that we should. If you had been there, Colin. See, Colin actually went back.
I didn't
to
know
Los
that
Angeles.
much Chinese. I didn't know the 5 Chinese words that I know now. Back
we
then.
needed you there. It would have been better if you had been there with us in India.
I do remember this. There's this image that will always be in my head. It was at night, the waves were crashing.
Yeah.
And you could just see just piles of trash
Crashing in the waves?
crashing in the waves onto the beach. And it was shocking. It was
Yeah.
crazy.
It was
Oh my
Juhu
God.
Beach. We were there for a few nights, and living in Huntington Beach, such a beautiful, pristine beach, and Juhu Beach was one of the most disgusting
Apocalyptic
places I'd
version.
ever
It
been.
is like the upside down version of.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was
Huntington,
awful.
yeah.
It was awful. And meanwhile, but the main thing is there's that constant frustration of trying to get this cash across. And we were thinking, how can we do this? How can we do this? How can we do this? And we started, when you're in that point where you have cash in the account and all you have to do is move over some of it, you can make your production happen and start back up. And the whole time that I'm doing this, I'm still communicating with Ford. I'm still communicating with our Chinese channel. I'm telling them everything that's happening. And so they were very much in the loop on this entire thing with us. The representative from Ford, the representative from Travel Channel, we'd have like weekly calls where I'd give them updates. I'm like, okay, I'm still in Jaipur. Oh, now I'm in Delhi. Now I'm down in Mumbai. And I was constantly giving updates as to where the status of getting this money wired across.
And Ford was very much on your side. Like,
Oh,
they were very
100%.
supportive, right?
Yeah, no, Ford and I had a really great relationship. They were very pleased. In fact, finally, Ford goes, you know what we can do for you guys is we'll take all the cash from the India account, take it into our India account into Ford India.
Great solution.
Yeah, great solution. And then we will transfer the money internally
There you
so
go.
that you can have it in Los Angeles.
Incredible.
And my colleague was on that call, and he says, yes, we will make that happen. And I was like, okay, great. This is all happening
Done.
now.
Yeah.
Done. Dusted. And then
it did not happen.
And then and then it didn't happen. And that's when Ford was like, we think you should prosecute this guy.
Yeah.
We think he's a con artist. We think he is doing some criminal stuff. And so all of a sudden, Ford and I started talking about ideas on how to rectify the situation.
Was Ford the first entity or person or whatever that brought that idea into the forefront of your mind, or did you already think this before?
They brought it up.
was
They
the
brought
first
it up
time.
right away.
But no, was it the first time?
Yeah, it was the first time.
Yeah.
I mean, we knew something was going on
But-
because it was just, like I was given 5-star treatment
Yeah.
when I first got to India back in November. And every month that kept going by, or every couple months, it was like another star got taken off. And all of a sudden I'm living in 1-star conditions. And but it's more importantly is I'm being treated that way by the colleague and by everybody else.
We should get you and that guy from Ford talking about that whole story. That'd be so cool.
Yeah, he was a good guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we never did get the cash cross. It's a long story. In order to tell the second part of this story, that's like another 2-hour.
Can you
podcast.
give me? Can you give the? Can you give the log line for the second part 2 of 2?
Yeah. Log line is we then suspected that there was criminal behavior going on. We tried to make different transfers happen. We offered we started throwing up just ridiculous solutions at my colleague to try to get him to just budge, like the Bitcoin. We talked about buying gold and diamonds and moving the cash across on a private jet, just anything we could to try to get him to turn over, essentially, because he had told us at one point that he had transferred the cash into his own safe locker. And so we tried to do whatever we could, but it was just one excuse after another, one cruelty. He'd have me fly to Delhi, or have me fly to Kolkata or like Calcutta or Mumbai to try to go and meet with various banking entities that would help us, these kinds of things. And there was always a reason why he needed me to be somewhere. And then he did a very sophisticated, sneaky trick to get me out of the country permanently, which was very successful. And then next thing you know, I'm in Los Angeles driving an Uber, trying to just be able to pay for food, literally pay for food. And that's when I contacted a law firm. It's when I contacted law enforcement. And there's a lot more to it because it turns out his family was a lot more corrupt and more criminal than anyone ever knew. His father ended up going to prison. So there was a lot of things that ended up happening, but it was, it was definitely the event of my life. And it's hard to get across what that experience was like. But the lessons learned from that, it's made me a much stronger person, a better person, a far more humble person. I mean, if everything had worked out in 2012 and we'd filmed this big show and I was, I was $100 millionaire at the age of 34, who knows what I would have been or what would have happened. Maybe good things. I don't know. But it definitely shaped my life. It's the number one most defining shaping experience of my life. It also, brought some very bad people into my life. But I'm glad it's over.
Yeah, for sure.
And it definitely made, so when people are like, oh, you're starting a business about baseball cards and making displays and cases for baseball cards, you're doing that? I'm like, are you kidding? Compared to what I went through with India and television and China and Ford and Brand USA and all those things, it's going to be a piece of cake relative. And funny story is several years later, when I was working up at Nike at a job, somebody told me that Brand USA was actually making a series called Road Trip America based on mine. And so,
which is what we called ours.
Yeah, so they actually kind of plagiarized the idea years later for one of their own projects, which always kind of made me sad that they did that. So the Department of Commerce ended up hiring a new group over the next couple of years, they put it together, and I remember seeing American Road Trip or Road Trip America on their website and just feeling like this ultimate betrayal.
Yeah.
That they were the ones that pulled out the rug from under me, that had me go to India, and then they went and made something similar to mine years later without involving us. So it's definitely a sad story. There's very little, the good stuff that came from it is the two guys I'm sitting with here on the couch right now. It actually brought my sister-in-law into my family. It made my family closer in many ways. So there's a lot of good that came out of it.
Yeah, you obviously became way more seasoned as an entrepreneur. Like all those unlucky things that happened, all those very bad things that happened that caused you to problem solve and be tenacious.
Yeah.
Definitely shaped you that way. But in terms of like lessons, like there's again some very, very, very unlucky things that happened that required a lot of action. What is there anything to be learned from that experience? Like if anyone was to ask you that question?
Well, I think great question, Sam. Hey, accidents happen, right? Like
Sure.
People get struck by lightning.
Yeah.
People get in car accidents. There's a single moment can change your life. And so there's an element of just really bad luck that I had met this person.
Yes.
Really bad luck that Brand USA was, that they pulled the rug from under us right when we needed them. if we had signed the deal with them and had them deposit the check just 2 weeks before, we would have been fine.
Yeah.
So it was almost like this. It was like this perfect storm of bad. And so the lessons learned from it was, obviously trust. Who to trust. I think
How to trust.
I think also my patience and my tenacity is where a virtue became a vice, where I was so patient and so tenacious that I probably chased the experience. I should have been in India for 1 week. I should have flown there, said, this is never going to happen. Like my current self would never get into that situation again, because when you start to see somebody's bad side and their horrible colors, you got to clip them. You got to get rid of them. I would hire people and keep people in my organization that I knew were bad eggs, but I should have fired them sooner. Whereas now, if somebody comes in that's bad egg, they're gone. They're just out. I don't have any patience or time for people that are going to distract or bring negative energy or do even the slightest hint of criminal behavior or fraud or anything. They're gone. So it taught a lot of lessons as far as being more assertive, more aggressive when you need to be, making hard decisions. But I think most of all, it just, built a shell of thick skin where I feel like very little in this life now that when it comes, that can't be figured out. Because once you've gone through an experience like that, you can kind of go through most anything. Mm-hmm. But no, I wouldn't wish that on anyone.
Course,
that was a terrible, terrible life experience. But I mean, come on, who's not going to want to read the book when the book's ready? Obviously, when we do the book, it's going to be way more organized than my ramblings because
there's also a part 2, though. I mean, still, we got to get into it. I know you gave the log line. I want to hear the in between.
How it finished out.
Yeah. Not now, because
and also,
we've been talking for way too long.
Before I write the book or make the show about the show, I'm going to read through the journal. And so it's going to bring in a lot more emotion and feelings of the entire experience. And I'll remember the details because I'm probably leaving some stuff out. I'm probably getting some dates wrong. But when I read the journal, everything will come back clear as a bell. I also have like probably 500 video clips that I took from that time period. And so I'll be able to go through all those and organize them. But I look forward to writing the book. And it needs to happen as soon as I can. And when Mint is fully functioning in a very safe space, I'll write the book. And there you go.
Cool. Awesome. Well,
so that's your car policy for today. Thank you for listening. Let us know if you have any questions.
What a good name for a podcast.
Car policy?
Tune our own horn there.
Oh,
I just really like it.
Tooting your own horn?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's fun.
Good. That's very punny.
No, thanks for
Lots of puns going on.
Thanks for just really breaking that down, Brian. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Brian.
Yeah.
Thanks, Brian.
Let's do that again.
Thanks for coming to India with me, Sam.
Anytime, man.
Part 2 coming.
I remember your order that you made for me that one time at the restaurant.
The Indian food?
Oh, my goodness. You did really good. You did really good.
Well, it's because we had lamb rogan josh. We had, what was it? Palak paneer. We
delicious.
had sag. We had korma. And
honestly,
of course, we'd have gulab
I don't know what
jamun.
you're complaining about.
Right, now I'm
India
hungry.
It was great.
There you go.
Maybe we should get Indian food?
We should. We haven't had it in a long time here.
We haven't.
Yeah.
We used to get Flavor of India in West Hollywood, but
so good.
we got to find the local spot.
I might pass. No, I would go with you guys. I think enough time has passed where I could go and eat Indian food again.
Let's do it.
All right. Thanks, guys.